Hey, Morty, quick favor.
What, cover me in gasoline and spiders? Fine, yeah, I'm in.
Wasn't my first pitch, but hey, not gonna waste this opportunity.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. Congratulations, you made it. Rick and Morty Season 4 is here. This is going to be my Episode 1 video. I'll be doing Easter eggs for the entire season. Be sure to subscribe to get everything if you're new to the channel, and we do a weekly merch giveaway. Careful for spoilers from the episode if you have not seen it yet, but top 10 WTF and Easter eggs. We'll just do Easter eggs as we go along because there were so many fourth wall breaks because it was the first episode of the season and a really awesome post-credits tag. The title of the episode, Edge of Tomorrow, Rick Die Repeat, was a reference to Edge of Tomorrow, the Tom Cruise movie, which is based on a Japanese manga called All You Need Is Kill, where he dies repeatedly thousands of times till he can find the right sequence of events that will allow time to move forward so that his life can go on. Just like Rick dies a bunch of times during the episode, and Morty is constantly seeking the right course of events to take so that he can achieve his intended outcome. But starting with number 10, Morty is stalking Jessica on her Instagram account, and they use the opening scene to let you know how the power dynamic has shifted from the end of Season 3. Rick is no longer able to just drag Morty on any adventure that he wants. He has to get a measure of consent. They also kind of explain how things are going to work at the end of the episode too when they do their big rant that's a big callback to Season 1. They also use this scene to tee up the idea that Rick has implanted chips in a lot of different people. He talks about the chip in Morty's spine later in the episode because of the holograms that are super PC, but he also has the chip in his brain that gives the automated responses. Rick's automated response is also a bit of a callback to Season 3, Episode 2, where he put Robot Morty and Robot Summer there with Beth so that she wouldn't know what was going on and they could go do whatever they wanted to. Speaking of Season 3, Episode 2, Hardcore Summer Episode, this scene is also a reminder of how hardcore she is because all she wants is that funeral selfie, doesn't care if Jerry dies, and doesn't care that Jessica's grandmother died either. Number 9 was the new Season 4 intro. There's a whole bunch of new intro scenes with a bunch of Easter eggs. They always switch the order for which ones are real, which ones are fake, but Justin has also said in the past that they're all meant to be real scenes, it's just that they haven't done those episodes yet, and if they have 70 more episodes, including all the Season 4 stuff, then eventually they probably will get to a lot of that stuff. But it starts with Rick flying into a space battle in the vacuum of space, with only a breather towards this monster version of Morty in orbit, destroying everything in his path with all these different space factions. Then there's the Terminator parody with all the snakes, the T-800 snake Terminator coming to save them just as the other Terminator snakes trying to attack them in the garage. The reason why I know this is probably real is because last week I posted a trailer with different footage from a future episode that also had more Terminator snake parody scenes. Then Morty falls into a dream world, crashing through some psychic barrier that looks like it's right out of Flash Gordon or an adventure serial, while Rick is getting his face beaten in by this person that's wearing very Infinity Gauntlet looking gloves on his hands. Giant Morty is going all Kraken from Clash of the Titans on these aliens from Season 3 Episode 5, Whirly Durly Conspiracy. Those aliens were normal size during that episode, so I'm assuming that Morty here is meant to be super huge. The last new intro scene seems like it's a reference to the Untitled Goose Game with the two-headed goose coming for them and Rick revealing that he has hidden weapons stashed in the fridge. If you remember back to Season 3 Episode 6, he has weapons stashed all over the house, everywhere. Number 8, Rick teaches Morty about the death crystals, explaining that they show you your potential deaths based on your current course of actions, which is why they show you so many at once, but they always change because your choices are always changing, so your future is always going to be different. If you pause and look at these, you can see so many different versions of their deaths. The animation director for the episode said that only about 40 of these made it into the actual episode, 40 different versions of their deaths, but they thought up way more versions. But probably the most interesting one is when they bring back Squanchy, you see up in this scene here, where he's ripping Rick to shreds. So for everybody hoping that Squanchy was going to come back, they totally did it, but nobody trusts Squanchy this season. But Rick diving to protect Morty from the laser fire is just another example of how he really does care about him, despite the fact that he's so pissed off about the shifting power dynamic and having to get permission to take Morty on adventures now. Rick kind of breaks the fourth wall when he's explaining how it's okay for them to treat the galaxy like their personal piggy bank, unlike the Crystal Poachers, when he refers to them as Rick and Morty. We're Rick and Morty. But as Morty grabs one of the crystals and sees his future with Jessica, he accidentally gets Rick killed. So number 7, Rick's contingency plans in the super PC hologram. They explain the backup chip that C-137 Rick installed in Morty's spine without telling him, so you also wonder how else has he been modified. but they sort of set up the running joke about the hologram being super PC, hologram rights, which is actually a concept that they dealt with on Star Trek Voyager. One of the writers on Rick and Morty is also doing a brand new animated Star Trek TV show called Lower Decks, so anytime there's a really specific Star Trek joke, I always wonder if he had something to do with it. The holograms were sort of the flip side of the coin from the really awful fascists that Rick kept running into. Like, they were really bad, but the super PC hologram wound up being just as bad in the end. My favorite hologram gag was the Weed Rick one when they were at school, full-blown protesting him, just going completely off book. Come on, Berkeley, get with the program. Number 6, turns out Project Phoenix really was the fallback that Rick thought it was during Season 2. We find out that it's capable of routing him to other dimensions and other clones of other Ricks from other realities, so even though he got rid of his clones during Season 2, there are so many other Ricks in other dimensions that did not. He winds up in Fascist Rick's clone body, and they sort of set up the running gag of all the terrible, worst versions of realities that he winds up in. They said part of the idea with this, with him going to all the different terrible realities, was that because he's traveled the finite curve so much, he knows which realities are worse than others, and they wanted to put him in the worst possible situations, so that's why he shows up first, naked in the basement of Fascist Rick, the worst possible situation that he would have to deal with before he can get home. He also breaks the fourth wall again when he tells them that he took his own program offline a couple seasons ago. Rick has known that he's been in a fictional TV show since Season 1. But if you look in the background, you can also see some Easter eggs for things that the animators added on the walls. R.I.P. China, this is a version of our president that we saw him fight last season, and if you look at the boxes on the shelves here, it's actually written as fascist time travel stuff, as if they have to remind themselves of their political leanings. The alternate Morty also kind of breaks the fourth wall when he forces Rick to go on an adventure with him, saying, "Stop doing meta commentary," and then Rick dies again, wakes up in Shrimp Rick's clone body, but the twist is that it's another fascist reality. We find out that Mr. Goldenfold is writing all kinds of weird stuff on the board. There's a phallus over here. Maybe he drew this on purpose, maybe not, because if you look over here, he also uses asses to talk about basic arithmetic. The crystal takes Morty out of class and runs into a bully that looks like he's a parody of Billy from Stranger Things, but he's voiced by Dan Harmon, who then references Pixar's Coco. Number 5, Morty gets his hands on all Rick's weapons, and they turn it into more of an Akira parody. So if you've never seen Akira, basic premise is Tetsuo is an Esper whose powers start to grow out of control until he turns into this giant amorphous blob at the end of the episode, which Morty winds up doing. I give him a whole bunch of bonus points in this episode for creative use of Meeseeks, not just the red Meeseeks, but Morty goes way overboard. They said part of the reason for using so many Meeseeks, especially this giant army scene, is because the whole concept is that Rick hates being derivative and repeating himself, but Morty makes those mistakes all the time, so all these versions of Morty are repeating old gags from previous seasons, which of course is a big callback to the Meeseeks episode where they all start going crazy. The writers and the animators also said they had a bit of a contest to see how creative they could get with the way Morty took out all these people. My favorite is probably the gun that slices all these cars and people up into a bunch of different pieces, then the pieces grow legs and start running off in all different directions. Also creative points for the molecular destabilizer that shoots them with what looks like DNA strands, just destabilizing their molecular structure. You also notice that Dan Harmon is voicing the news anchor that's gaslighting his co-anchor while this is all going on, and Rick winds up in a teddy bear Rick, which you'd think would be the cutest reality, but also winds up being super fascist. Peace, I'm out of here. Morty in the courtroom facing the judge also kind of reminded me of the Judge Morty short from a couple seasons ago. If you pause the news broadcasts and you read the tickers, they also use these for some meta jokes too, making fun of the way people pronounce LaCroix or LaCroix. No matter how you pronounce it, you still look stupid. When they start cutting to the scenes of other people watching the news broadcast, you look over on the right here in what looks like a version of Times Square. There's an ad that Justin Roiland worked into the background of the episode for his VR game called Trover Saves the Universe. This is an actual real ad for a game that you can buy in real life right now. Really big WTF that Morty turns down Naked Jessica because he thinks the crystal wants him to. Number 4, Wasp Rick for the win. The writer said that they wrote him to seem like the most terrible version when he first shows up, but somehow the most empathetic despite the fact that he's been through all these fascist realities. He drops a joke about Morty being stuck on a bunch of bad political message boards. They feast on a bug version of Mr. Goldenfold and somehow have the most loving family relationship of any of the realities that we've seen so far. When they make it back, we find out that Rick has been keeping a special boggler creature in a box. We don't know exactly what it does, but they'll probably pay that joke off later this season or a future season, so just open up a bookmark in Chrome for that. They make a joke about the red Kirkland brand Meeseeks boxes. If you don't have one of those in your area, they're just a giant discount Walmart type of business. They generate red Meeseeks that are super sucky. The hologram comes back and drops an Isaac Asimov reference from I, Robot about the 3 laws of robotics, the greatest of which is that they're never supposed to harm humans. Number 3, Morty goes full Akira in the wastelands with one of Rick's weapons. You wonder why Rick has this and what he was intending to use it for eventually. But then the hologram winds up getting turned into Akira Rick with the Pharaoh fluid, made flesh, and goes on a big rant about how he was lying about being super PC intolerant the entire time. Again, because the show typically doesn't want to take too many sides, that's why Rick at the end of this says, there's a lesson here, but somebody else is going to be the one to figure it out. They pay off the joke about Wasp Rick laying eggs in people's eyes, and then number 2, the ending of the episode, Rick and Morty both recite the message of the episode, Morty saying, don't be so worried about the future that it prevents you from being happy, and Rick saying, you should probably worry about the future a little bit. Rick makes a Full House reference, Jerry directly references Akira in anime, then they break the fourth wall again when they're talking about how they'll do classic stuff sometimes, and other times they'll do brand new weird stuff, and sometimes they'll go all Seinfeld and they won't do anything in episodes. Morty also references the 100 years of Rick and Morty rant from Season 1, Episode 1, just calling back to that, and then they break the fourth wall again when they yell at Summer for ruining the Season 4 premiere. Number 1 WTF was the post-credit scene, where they reveal that future that Morty saw in the crystal was totally misleading and Jessica was just a hospice care worker who comforted people who had totally been alone and didn't have anyone. Morty just submits himself to the worst things Rick can think to do to him, hey, not gonna waste this opportunity, and then there's a tag scene honoring Mike Mendel, who was their longtime line producer and friend who recently passed away. It was a really tragic event, it shook them up, so that's why they put this at the end of the episode. But if you did spot any Easter eggs during the episode that I didn't mention in the video, just write them below in the comments. I'll be doing a trailer video for Season 4 Episode 2 that should post by tomorrow. I'll name a giveaway winner when I post that. Everyone click here for my new Season 4 trailer video with a bunch of new scenes from future episodes, and click here for all my other Rick and Morty Easter egg videos. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody stay awesome. See you guys tonight.